Fantastic. Morning, everyone. Just gone past top of the hour, so certainly a cool and damp morning in Joburg. Some interesting weather for us, but fantastic to have some rain around. So big welcome to everybody. See, Leighton's just come on board. Morning, Leighton, and yeah, let's get the show on the road, Lee. So over to you.
Well, we're on countdown. You know, this more or less lockdown. I don't think there's going to be too much of a difference between 5 and 4, but we are coming to the end of the official 5. So today I wanted to start. I don't want to preempt the conversation too much. I've got some ideas, but as I was thinking about today, I just thought, let me throw it open and find out, is there anything bubbling for anybody? Are there any ideas, thoughts that you want to throw into the pot that would be a good idea for us just to mull over and share together? So I want to start with that, just opening the platform and saying, what have you been thinking about? What are some of the ideas that have been sort of stirring in your mind, and how would you like us to think about them, either as a story or as a question? Let me open it for the moment.
Great, thanks, Lee. I'm sure you've caught everybody off guard this morning, which is fantastic. So, don't let anyone get comfortable with what they expect from these sessions, because I think that's what it's all about. I see Herman's been up early this morning, so he's awake. So Herman, let's go over to you.
Well, I don't want to share what is steering my mind. I just want to steer a little bit. There was a brief indication by Lee that that she was suggesting a 3-day a week kind of get together, and Trevor insisted it should be 5, and that's what was decided. And I said in my message to Lee, why is that not something we should actually leave to the collective to decide? And that's number one. And number two is also, maybe some of us would like to have particular subjects discussed, and we could kind of propose it a day or so in advance to the group. Thanks.
Thanks, Herman. Lee, I don't know if you want to pick up on some of those points, or we just move on.
So maybe just from a practical point of view, Herman's raised the question of how often do we meet, and so I suggested 3 days because of my own. It was purely selfish, quite honestly, because I was finding 7 days, taxing, and in terms of the responsibility of facilitating. So I felt within myself that I could manage 3, but in discussion with Trevor and Ivan, and if that's okay with you, that we kind of loosen up the style a little bit going forward, and so. Trevor, Ivan, and I have been together in working this, because it was really just, we did it as an experiment to see how can we just get a group of people together who would like to have some positive conversations in a time that's really quite difficult. And I think going forward, we see the value of it, and we'll just change up the facilitation and do it a little bit more loosely. And as Herman says, we would definitely love it if anybody, anytime can bring up a topic. That's the whole idea, is that we're giving a platform, and if there's something that's prompting you, or there's a discussion point or a point of interest that you think would be of value for us just to toss the ball around in terms of our thoughts, I do believe that that behavior change starts with thinking and with awareness. So if we can create that idea, that platform here, then please, by all means, let's do that. So I think that hopefully that answers that question. So, but in what Herman is saying, and I come back, is there a topic that anybody wants to talk about? Otherwise, I'm going to go in the direction of thinking about our thinking and our assumptions, particularly, which is what I was pointing to in the direction of the email that I sent yesterday.
Great, thanks, Lee. Trevor was wanting to speak, but he seems to have disappeared, so we've lost him off the connection for now. So I'm not too sure who booted him off this morning, but we'll just have to pick it up from there. So yeah, let's just go around and find out what's on people's minds. So Ian, let's start with you.
I don't really have an idea at this stage in terms of conversation. It's quite interesting every day in terms of the different topics that come up and the discussions around them. So I don't have anything specific to think of at this particular point in time. I'll have to give it some thought, but would appreciate the suggestions from everybody else.
Ivan, if I can say, I don't, if there isn't anything that anybody wants to sort of immediately bring up, maybe we can just go in the direction of what are our assumptions. Ian Sherry was very helpful for me in this. We had a discussion on a different a think tank a little while ago, and we were trying to think of solutions for we were thinking big questions around how do we help South Africa cope in this time of COVID-19. And he first, before we started coming up with some solutions, he said, well, we need to check our assumptions. What are we assuming in terms of how long we think this is going to go on? Or, there were various things that he was raising in terms of our ideas are based on our assumptions. And I wanted to come back to that question is, in the art of possibility, the Zanders also talk about the fact that we need to always assume that we're assuming. We have a preset paradigm that we're working with the whole time, a paradigm that's based on our background, our life experience, and our own personal reflections and thinking. So what is it, are there some aspects about our paradigm or our assumptions that we need to think about? Now, not all assumptions are bad. I think that's another thing that we need to, some of our assumptions are good, and we need to, but we still need to realize that they're ours, and that we are basing decisions and choices. So this is where this whole thing came from, is our choices, our understanding of what we decide in life is based on our assumptions. So one of the assumptions that I know, it's not necessarily, one of the assumptions that I work on constantly in my life is if I work hard enough, I'll get success. So this is an assumption that's worked well for me on occasion and not so well for me on other occasions, because it isn't just about the hard work. It's about working in the right way, and then for me to take my foot off the accelerator and to say, am I doing the right thing in the right way, in the right for the right purpose? And that is a discipline for me, because then I feel like, oh, I'm not getting on with my work. I need to be working hard, and I need to keep paddling or pedaling or whatever the metaphor is. So that's just an example of an assumption that I've been playing with over the last little while. So I hope that launches the conversation a little bit better.
Right, thanks, Lee. I see Trevor's back with us, and Trevor, you were wanting to pick up before you disappeared there for a moment.
Yeah, I did put a comment on chat, but it all seems to have disappeared on my end. So I'm just going to repeat it. Just that little stimulant that you put through yesterday on email had me thinking. And as I'm reviewing and I'm pulling out tons of things out of cupboards over this lockdown period, and stuff is falling out, and I'm remembering things going back 40, 50 years ago. This little statement has been going around in my head all the time, and that is, don't assume or presume that you know me. And I'll try not to presume or assume that I know you. So what I'm saying is, throughout my life, I've seen individuals take instant decisions on who or what I am without actually knowing a thing. And even those people who have known me for years only know that much about who I actually am or what I'm about. But I also know that I take instant decisions on individuals on the other side. But I've got to try and reflect. People, you don't take enough time to actually find out who or what I am. And in fact, I'm not going to tell you all the things that you may not ever get to find out about me. At some time you might, but you'll never get to find out about them. So it's an interesting statement that I've got going around in my head. Don't assume or presume that you know me. And I'll try not to assume or presume that I know anything about you.
Yes, Guy.
Lee, Trevor, I was going to chat on the thinking side. And I think, as I've mentioned through some of these conversations, don't judge a book by its cover. But following on, the thinking side, I've broken it into two parts, if I may. My thinking during this period, and what have I tried to do to get my thinking right and in the right space, and what are the sort of disciplines or habits that I've got into to try and make sure that my thinking is in sync, because I've got a number of people relying on my good judgment and my good thinking to actually help them through what we're going through. So I've actually had to make sure what is my thinking like, so I can actually express that verbally. Because a lot of people have Johari's window at the moment. I don't know if you know of the concept, but a lot of people protect themselves and they won't let people in. And one's got to break that down. So moving to the next point is, how does one break that down? Is critically, from my standpoint and what I do in my coaching, is I ask certain questions, and some of those questions are actually sometimes very stupid. They're very stupid, and sometimes the people I'm asking the questions to reflect and say, "Why are you asking that question? It seems stupid." But the key point is, if I want to communicate and sort out the thinking, I must actually try and find out how the other person is thinking, and then that puts me and helps me to help them and help obviously myself. And Trevor said he's just pulled out some stuff from 50 years ago. Hopefully it's still relative. Maybe not, but sometimes go down memory lane. But recently I pulled out this book, John Maxwell, Thinking for a Change. He's quite a fan of mine. So hopefully there's been a lesson or two here, and I will sit back and learn the rest of today's session. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Guy. Yeah, it's an interesting comment you make there about stupid questions. I have a philosophy that there's no such thing as a stupid question the first time you ask it. But if you keep on repeating the same question, then it becomes stupid if you haven't actually learned from the answers that you've got. I've built my life around asking questions and not being afraid to ask questions from people. When I started in business, I knew very little about business, about how businesses worked, about the principles. I had no tertiary education to back me up, and I just used to say to people when they said, made a statement, I said, well, would you mind explaining that to me? I don't really understand. And that's the way I've learned my entire life, just by asking those simple questions and being prepared to acknowledge that I didn't know. And that's how I've learned. So I strongly believe in asking questions, and what I've learned over the years is often the simple questions get the best answers. Because if you make your questions too complicated, people think you're already giving them the answers. and they tend to be steered in a direction. So, you know, the what, the why, and the hows are often very good questions to get people to ponder. So that's just a bit from my side. So yeah, Leighton, your thoughts?
I'm thoroughly enjoying being in a group of people with the wisdoms that they have. I've been lucky enough to share some offline conversations with some of you, and I enjoy the richness of what's going on here. I think to try and pick up a thread here is, it's kind of like a conversation around what are we going to do, how are we going to do it, where are we going to go. I'm reminded of Rudyard Kipling's wonderful poem to his daughter, I think it was Elsie, about 6 honest serving men, who, what, why, where, how. And I think my sense is that there's a group that's forming here. And typically in group dynamics, we can say that there are 4 simple stages. And I'm sure you're all really well aware of them around storming, norming, forming, and performing. And there's sufficient operators in this conversation that they're balanced enough that they want to walk the talk. And that means they want to talk, yep, sure. But the talk needs to have a direction and outlet, because there's real strength and real energy in this space. And what's critical for the group is to release that energy in a way that serves the group. I appreciate Trevor's comment about not presuming to know who you are, Trevor, or assume who you are. That's great. That's quite a personal reflection. I'm more concerned about the group reflection here and how the group gels and comes together for the group's benefit and beyond the group, because our influences stretch far and wide. And there's real power here. And how do we actually use that to somebody else's advantage? I gain in being in this space. How do I multiply it? Because I am really aware of the fact that we're in a time when people need wisdom. And how do we disseminate the wisdom that we have here in a way that's relative to others and make improvements for them? And forgive me for the passion, and I have had the coffee, and it's great to be here. It's sunny in Prince Albert, but we had rain yesterday, so I'm cool.
Great, thanks, Leighton. And I think some very pertinent points you make there, you know, and it's definitely something that's been going through our minds is how do we take this to the next level? And I think that's essentially what you're saying. And I agree, you know, there is the opportunity for extreme power within a group like this if applied correctly. So yeah, 100% with you on that one. Steve, what are your thoughts?
Sorry, you caught me browsing through the chat there. What did I want to say? I think one of the fundamental ideas around thinking through what you're thinking and being aware of blind spots is a perspective, that questioning perspective that people have covered. One of the things I learned during my studies was a shift from modern to postmodern therapeutic modalities is essentially a shift in assumption from you being the smartest person in the room to you being either a equal or the least intelligent person in the room. And the person that you're working with or the group that you're working with are actually the experts in themselves and in their own problems, etc. And that has been incredibly helpful for me to try and reduce my blind spots, to reduce my sense of being the expert on everything, and to shift me into a questioning attitude towards focusing on the other person and who they are and what they know. But it doesn't change the fact that you do know things and that you are aware of things, and that there then becomes a sort of a collaborative alliance between you and the people that you're working with. And there's a shared mindset of asking questions of each other, which I find very helpful. But definitely that mindset, that taking that stance of I don't know everything and I need to ask a lot of questions. And I like the simplicity of questions that you talked about, Ivan. I think that's also really helpful. Great, thanks, Steve. I'd like to switch across to Tselo now. I see he's all wrapped up. It's obviously cold in KZN this morning, so Tselo, are you warm enough to? Have you warmed up enough to be able to talk to us this morning?
I've tried. Good morning, everybody. Just enjoying the conversation, and thanks to everyone for sharing. I really like what Steve is saying. It really resonates with me. Sometimes it's good to just play an observer and just relax, listen, and digest. I'm doing a lot of that today with this kind of weather. Blessings, everyone.
Thanks, Stella. Karina, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, interesting to listen to everyone. Yeah, my 2 cents, I think, is making assumptions. Not to make assumptions, you need a lot of self-awareness, which I feel we have in this group. But the one thing that goes out the window is logical thinking in terms of stress. So to keep your self-awareness is very difficult when your brain has decided to go into survival mode and then into flight fight. So, and I think what's concerning me over the last 2 or 3 days is seeing a new wave coming through on a national level where people are starting to question the lockdown and was it necessary? And there's this feeling of turning on the leader, which is also part of normal team dynamics, is we set up leaders and then afterwards we take them down. But so there's interesting new groundswell of we did the right thing to, okay, it's not anymore perceived to be the right thing. So my thoughts is more around in times of stress, and we can be self-aware, and as we mature, we become more self-aware. But understanding when you're under extreme stress, your brain moves to the amphibian brain and you don't think logically anymore. All those good intentions you have goes out the window.
Okay, thanks, Karina. Nozipho, let's come across to you. Yeah, your thoughts. You need to unmute your microphone, Nozipho.
Okay. Thanks. Hi, morning, everyone. I think it may have been Guy that spoke earlier about the Johari window. And I think the conversation also takes me to the Johari window in terms of self-awareness and, how self-awareness firstly comes out of self-reflection. So we have to reflect first before we get to, for us to be self-aware, you have to have gone through the process of self-reflection. But also being aware that, because what the Johari window essentially says for me, how I interpret it is that how I see myself is different to how others see of me. And being aware that I need to open up more to let other people into who I am, because somebody spoke earlier about people not knowing who we are, and that's very true. But it becomes up to us to open up more, because if I want you to know me more, in fact, for our communication to work, for us to have a better exchange, I need to open up more, to let you in more into who I am, so that you've got an understanding of who I am, not just who you perceive me to be. I think that's sort of where I am this morning. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Nozipho. Stella, let's come across to you.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, some interesting thoughts and ideas from everyone. I just want to pick up from what Lee said about working hard. I myself, and I think many of you, or everyone, is hard workers in this group, but I've come to realize, especially in this time, yes, we must work hard, but also not just work harder, but smarter, and also with new technology, or with the circumstances that we're in, to use technology to actually work smarter, not necessarily harder. So something to think about. Thanks.
Right, thanks, Stella. Devin, I haven't seen you for a while, so welcome back. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Obviously, I think we've discussed, or you've discussed and covered everything very well. I just think we never stop learning, and we need to constantly ask great questions every day. And if we do that with a group of, like-minded people like yourselves, I think it's very important right now, especially that we're so isolated. We need forums like this where we can not only just get the opinions of a certain media or whatever. So it's just really, really good to engage and to keep this kind of channel open. So every morning that I miss it, I regret it. So it's not that I've been AWOL or anything. It's just been busy. But thank you.
Okay, thanks, Devin. Cecile, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I was listening to all of you about working harder and smarter. I just got to the realization again that I am frustrated with myself, that I'm working in my business instead of on my business, and you are so busy with working in the business at times that you cannot see the wood for the trees. And I was so intending to this last 3 weeks to stop stuff that I'm doing from day to day, working in the business and start working on the business. Well, alas, I still haven't had a chance to do that. So that frustrates me, but it's, it's just a constant battle to try and just stop and say, okay, let's just think about things outside the business a little bit better.
Great, thanks, Cecile. Mosopo, your first time with us this morning, so welcome. I'm not too sure if you realize what you've gotten yourself into here, but love to hear your thoughts on the conversation so far. So if you'll just unmute your microphone by pressing your spacebar and holding it down, and then you can just say.
Yeah, thank you so much for welcoming me. I decided to come onto this space this morning because I think the rest of all this lockdown, I was very discouraged. And my mind was very blocked and where to go from here, because I think that my business is not onto essential goods. And then I was just saying that maybe let me be in the group of the people where maybe I can be lifted up, or really finding my thinking and changing the direction. So I decided to join.
Well, welcome again, and thanks for joining us. And yeah, we look forward to hearing more from you in future meetings. Jasper, your thoughts?
Oh, my thoughts are all over the place, because I sense on the one hand with the beginning of the discussion that with Leighton's comment, how do we utilize the strength of the group that we have around us, and then with interjecting the whole thing of paradigm and coming up with Johari's window, which basically says we all have a blind spot, but to the degree that we can open up and we allow people to give us feedback on our blind spot, then that spot becomes smaller and smaller and our own effectiveness increases. So, and then in terms of topic, I was just thinking, all of us are very active when this meeting is over. We're out there working probably 26 of the 24 hours a day just to try and make our impact on this world. But we may have a blind spot in what we're doing. We are so close to the trees that we can't see what do you say, the plantation or whatever. And maybe it could be an interesting direction. Is to allow everyone to have a session that he facilitates, and if his kind of interest spans over a couple of sessions, give him a spot a week or something like that, and let him then lead that, and the rest of the group gives their frank input, and we mustn't be thin-skinned in terms of the feedback we get. We might even end up coming out of this thing, changing our direction of what we thought was our speciality. So that's where my thoughts have been going as I listen to everybody.
Great, thanks, Jasper. Sarah, good morning to you, and welcome back. We haven't seen you for a little while, so you've been listening quietly in the corner there, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one.
Yes, good morning, everybody. It's been a while indeed. I was busy with exams.
My quick thought really is, as you know, I'm just thinking about the word assumption. You know, and I just want to share something very close, which is actually what happened in a few days ago, how these assumptions can actually shape our minds and bring us to conclusions that can also be disempowering for ourselves. So I have had an assumption for a while that I was very bad with numbers. I had no interest in anything that had to do with accounting, stats. It was not unfounded. I just did very bad at school from that point of view. And then now I'm busy doing a certificate, you know, as a professional director, and I had to do financial accounts and statements. And I was confronted with that because my initial thought was, no, but I hate accounting and I can't do it. You know, but, you know, having come across the gig message, that has really just opened up my heart and mind, and to realize that these assumptions start from your mind, and the limit is really what we place in our own minds. And of course, we grow in certain things. I then decided I'm going to put this into a test because I needed to prove to myself that assumption was wrong. The assumption that I had about myself was wrong. So it started that whole process. So I wrote the exam yesterday, and to my surprise, I actually excelled in it. And again, it just brings into those points that, you know, it starts with our minds. Yes, I'm aware that there is the macro that has to do with other people, that has to do with the group dynamics, but you don't have much control because you cannot control other people. You cannot change other people. Where you can start, the basis point is yourself. And that departure point has a lot to do with how you allow your mind to be open, you know, to stretch beyond boundaries that we define for ourselves, whether founded from events that happened that maybe brought us to a certain conclusion that we can do certain things. But that can actually change as we open up our mind. I certainly live with that now. I live with an open heart and an open mind to be able to allow even other people that might have difference of opinions, to allow people to be and have that open heart and open mind, to know that the biggest asset I have is how I allow my mind to think. And from that departure point, then I'm able to make an impact in other people's lives, not assuming that they need what I think they need, but hearing them out and hearing what they need and see what my contribution is to that. Yeah, thanks.
Fantastic, thanks, Sarah. And that was a great welcome back comment. So thank you for that. Mpho, I think you're the last one who hasn't had an opportunity, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one, and then I'll hand back to Lee to wrap up.
Morning, everyone. It's unfortunate that I'm the last one because I don't think I've got the greatest contribution. I am so exhausted. My video is not on because I'm in my jammies. I thought I could do it all. That was the assumption, and I'm crashing. That's my final comment.
Mpho, I don't think you must worry about that at all. We all go through those stages, and the fact that you're here, I think, is special and important. And you've made some great contributions, and you will make great contributions going forward. So I don't think you must make any assumptions about your capabilities. What you're doing and what you're going through is amazing, and the challenges that you face are big, and you're handling it. So I think well done, and keep it going. Lee, back to you to wrap up.
Oh, I'm in awe of the level of conversation we can have. It bounced all over the place, but that really shows the diversity of the group, but also the personal sharing and the depth of insights that people have. So thank you very much. And yes, it does beg the question, how do we as a collective, and I don't mean this as a closed group, and I think although there are people who are regulars, we've got Masopa who's just joined us, and then this will continue to grow, and so there's this balancing act that we're going to need to continue to work with, is how do we capitalize on the wealth that's in this group, as well, but at the same time make sure that it remains flexible and open to everyone and anyone who wants to participate. So Jasper's raised this question before of, is there an opportunity for us to share not only our personal story, but maybe what is the direction that we're going in, if I'm reading Jasper correctly, to say, this is the pathway I'm taking in terms of my work and my efforts, and this is what I'm trying to achieve through it. Not so much as a pitch, and I think this is what we need to be careful. There's a place for business collaboration, and that's the Four Ways Chamber, but that this would be more an opportunity for us to get some input from the group to say, on what basis are you choosing to follow that path? And if that, I'm playing with that idea and that question, and the possibilities of maybe sharing a little bit more deeply about the purpose that we see for our lives. And I think that would definitely fall in line with where the direction of this group is, this connecting of my personal thinking and life with the actions that I'm taking to pursue that. And so maybe how do you feel about us swinging around and thinking about our purpose and maybe sharing quite personally around that, and then allowing the group to participate from their own experience, but also maybe to give some feedback on possible blind spots. And I certainly, one of the things I've learned in my life is I think about sales. I always tell people, when you're in sales, have a thick skin and a soft heart. And I think that's the message I would have for this group as well. So thanks everyone. Really appreciate your sharing. It sounds like we are coming, hear and pause, cry. I know a couple of days ago, Trevor was saying he's drained. I took a few days off. There's definitely a sense of it's been quite a tough process of trying to keep going, and we do actually need to take some time out just to breathe and rest and gather ourselves towards ourselves. So hoping you can find yourselves doing that in the next few days.
Great,
thanks.
Thanks Lee for that. Yeah, and I think there's definitely strength in numbers, and we must learn to use those strengths and leverage the strengths that are in the group to lighten the load and share the burden in some ways. So I think that's my last thought. So fantastic day further, everybody. Great one. See you again tomorrow morning. Go well.